Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. For a Friday, July 24th, 2015, you're listening to Thoughts, Comments, Opinions. Today, we have a little break from writers, and we'll be talking to a visual artist, Oonagh Latchford, who's based out of lovely Wexford in the southeast of Ireland, talking about her work as an artist painting in oils and acrylics, also about teaching kids and adults, and you know what? You'll even learn how to clean a brush properly. Oonagh's a terrific guest, and I hope you enjoy. If you're watching this on video, you'll also see several of her paintings. So sit back, relax, fire up a podtini, and listen to the words about pictures as they fly through the air. And on the line we have Oonagh Latchford. Good morning, Oonagh. How are you?
Hi, Hubert. Lovely to speak to you.
And yourself. Now, in the introduction, I mentioned that you're a visual artist. You work in oils and acrylics.
Yeah.
When did you know that you wanted to be an artist?
It's something I've always done, really. I grew up in a family where there was always lots of sort of crayons and paints and materials lying around. So it was something that I always played with as a kid, and something that I was always quite keen to get involved in. I mean, as kids, even for sort of Christmas presents from Santa, I used to get pottery wheels and things like this.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit mad. Um, But it was something I had always done, but I had never actually studied it. So I went back to college as a mature student. I actually just graduated about 5, 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been working full time as a professional artist since then.
What did you do before you went back to school?
Well, I'm originally from Dublin, and when I lived in Dublin, I was sort of working in office-based roles, mainly customer service and, roles like that. And then about 13 years ago, myself, my husband, and the kids, we moved to Wexford,
Mm-hmm.
which is in the southeast of Ireland. And I sort of made the conscious decision that I'd stay at home with the kids for the first while, maybe the first year, just to make sure they were settled or whatever, which I did. And then because I had taken that break and I was at home, I started really painting again and doing, all the stuff that I used to do before. And that really sort of ignited my interest again. So then I went back and studied it after that.
Fantastic. And you work at home? Your
I do, I do.
studio
I
as
had
well?
a studio in Wexford Town at one point for a little while, but I actually now my studio is based at home, so it's great. I have a very, very short commute.
Lovely. So, what kind of influences were there on your painting? Like, were you a kid that loved to walk through galleries and the big picture books and so forth?
Not really. As kids, I mean, we always had lots of materials, but we didn't really go to galleries or didn't really go to, very rarely anyway. So that wouldn't have been a big influence as a kid. But I always was very visual. I always liked looking at images. I always liked looking at other people's paintings, but I didn't really have the gallery exposure that much as a kid. But I am very influenced really by photography. I have a huge influence or huge interest in photography. And a lot of my paintings would sort of stem from that interest. Like I'm very interested in how sort of high contrasts and oversaturation caused by like strong sunlight or artificial lighting or overexposure can sort of change the shapes and the colors within an image, and that's what I really try to explore in my paintings, other than the portraiture, which actually the portrait work is also influenced very much by photographs, but late work in the last few years has been influenced really by online photographs, in particular the selfie. And a lot of my portraits will have sort of they'd be cropped in angles that maybe shouldn't work or wouldn't be sort of technically good composition.
Yeah, there's a phrase. or a term in your biography that I confess ignorance, as I do on a daily basis, um, and I hope I pronounced this right.
Yeah.
Bokeh,
Oh, bokeh photography.
bokeh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a Japanese term, and it means really to blur. It refers to if you see a photograph sometimes, and like a perfectly perfect bokeh image will have one area that's defined, and the rest of the photograph will be blurred.
Fascinating. Yeah.
Sorry, what were you saying?
No, no. I was just babbling. Go right ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that I've sort of always been interested in that sort of blurry quality that you get in the bokeh image. And quite often, what I do is I'll take photographs, but I'll purposely make them blurred, and then I'll paint from there. And I suppose it's the aesthetic within the blur that I'm interested in, and it's sort of, to me, it's almost like it allows sort of someone looking at the picture, I suppose, to fill in their own sort of thoughts into the blurred area. It's almost like sort of, to me, the blur is almost like memory, and it allows people sort of access their own memories and maybe put their own thoughts into the paintings, which sort of is a big part of it for me with that particular type of work. They're the blurry ones.
True enough. And you know, when you mention worlds, to me, that's the wonderful thing about paintings or going through our galleries, that they really are windows in in into a world.
Yeah,
Like Sunday in the park with George. Where you get this entire musical built out of a painting.
yeah.
Yeah. One thing that occurred to me is that you paint on both canvas and on wood. How do you pick which one? And also, you paint in oil and acrylic. When you have an idea for a painting,
Yeah.
how do you
Well,
choose?
I used to paint quite a lot in oil. In the last few years, my work is almost exclusively in acrylics. I very rarely use oils anymore. Um, Partly because I'm too impatient for the oils to dry. I like to build up my paintings in layers, and the acrylics dry pretty quickly, which suits me. But also, acrylics have got so good now that you can do everything really with acrylics that you couldn't necessarily have done before. So you would have had to use oils, and there's so many different gels and mediums that you can mix in with the acrylics to make them do the same jobs, or different things that you more actually than you can do with oils. So I work almost always in acrylics now. With regards to canvas or the wood, it just depends really. I mean, sometimes it could be as basic as what I have, what's lying around the
Yeah.
studio. Um, Sometimes it may be lots of different factors. It could just be sometimes for some portraits I like canvas, but almost always I like the wood for everything else. I mean, the other thing I paint on at the moment is perspex, um, or flexiglass, as you would probably know it as.
Okay. Right.
And I prefer the hard surface because I like to be able to sort of apply paint and then sometimes scrape bits of it back. I mean, sometimes you paint almost as much by removing stuff as you do by applying paint.
Oh, so almost like sculpture, where you start with something and chip away until what's left is
Yeah,
what you want.
yeah. I mean, I think you probably I would always nearly take away as much paint as I put on.
So there's a pile of rags then.
Yes, yes, quite a lot. But well, it depends actually. For different types of paintings, I would probably take off more, maybe less for portraits and more for the other type. But yeah, it certainly would be a large factor in it, and that's why I think I prefer the hard surface.
This may sound an odd question, but I'll explain why I'm asking it. Is that,
Okay,
yeah, not long ago, I read a novel about no, sorry, no, it was a nonfiction about the painting of the Mona Lisa.
right.
And Leonardo fiddled and fiddled and fiddled and fiddled with it for 30, 40 years or so. So
God bless his patience.
yeah, yeah. Well, he had the Medici backing him, so he could afford to do this,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But 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 that leads to the question: how do you know when a painting's done?
Well, that's the million dollar question, isn't it? I mean,
And if somebody
it's really
offers you the
just
$1 million, they got the painting.
no, I mean it's just really instinctive, or it's just a gut feeling, I guess. You just know when it's done, but more importantly, you know when it isn't.
Right.
And it's sort of, I mean, sometimes you can paint a painting and you can struggle with it and you can paint it and you think it's done, and then you come into the studio the next day and you look at it and you go, no, it's not, and you start messing with it again, and that can go on for ages. But it's just sort of, I suppose, the dialogue between you and the painting, and it just goes back and forth, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But then other times you can start a painting and it can just happen, it can be done within a few hours, it just seems to paint itself. So
Yeah, because that leads to something I was wondering about. In my field, in writing and particularly in playwriting, characters will lead me in directions. They'll pull me along
oh
in
yeah, yeah.
into the plot. Do paintings do that too?
Yes, definitely. And I think particularly the more successful paintings do. I mean, it makes your painting work more interesting, I think. Um, like certainly when I would start a painting, I would have, I suppose, I would have a plan in my head or an idea in my head about what the painting is going to turn out like, or what I would intend the painting to start out like. But I would always be prepared, not even just be prepared, but I would welcome the painting sort of taking on its own life and allowing it going off in its own direction and deviating from the plan. And sometimes they'd be fairly like what you thought, and sometimes they'd be completely different, and that's fine.
Now, you also teach art at
Yeah.
primary school level, and
Well,
that.
actually, I don't. I
Oh,
don't teach at primary school level, but I did have a residency in a primary school.
oh, was that it then? Okay.
Yeah, it was basically it was a project. It's a project called the Living Arts Project, which is sort of a partnership between the Wexford Arts Centre, Wexford County Council, and the Arts Council of Ireland. And what they do is, it's a fairly new project. Last year was only its second year, but what they do is they select four schools throughout the county and four artists, and then you're matched up with the school, and you basically have for nearly the whole school year you have a residency in that school, but you're just there. I was there, like say, one day a week, and it's great because you're going in, you're an artist going in to work with the kids rather than their teacher as such. So you can explore lots of different areas with them. I mean, we're lucky as an artist going in, you don't really have to stick to the curriculum. You can do whatever type of art you want with them, which is great.
Have you ever seen the play or movie Six Degrees of Separation?
No.
Ah, there's a wonderful line in it. The couple in it, he's either an art agent or gallery owner, I forget which, and he talks about his child, and the child brings home finger painting
Yeah.
or whatever, and he says that I looked at this painting, it was a Matisse. My child is a Matisse, uh, which you know to me is that whole thing that kids aren't constrained by wanting to make it right.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
that they just express. So it must be a joy for you
Oh,
working
it's
with kids.
amazing. Amazing. I mean, it's funny you're talking about kids though not being constrained. It sort of depends on their age. Sort of very small kids, they'll work away very freely, and then when they start to get to maybe about 9, then they're like they really want to get it right, and it's a bit of a struggle to let them let go of that. But yeah, no, they're brilliant to work with and very inspiring. Give you lots of ideas for your own work.
Indeed, indeed, yeah. I found that when I taught acting, that I wasn't so much teaching acting as that I was unlearning a lot of what happened. Because as you say, when you look at kids in the school ground,
Yeah.
when they're 5 or 6 or whatever, they're constantly creating, they're making up songs and stories and so on and so forth, and then at some point they start to think, oh, it's not cool. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
Do, do you teach adults as well?
I do. I teach a adult night class, which has been running for a couple of years now, which is great. I have a sort of fairly regular crew come along, and then there's quite, like newcomers and other people come along as well. So yeah, it's great, really, really good, and it's really enjoyable, and I get to, like, you get to know the people. It's really, really good, but it also in like sort of in preparing for their own classes, or sorry, preparing what I'm going to do in classes with other people. It's great because it does sort of force you to look at, we all get stuck in a rut and do things sort of the same way over and over. But then if you're preparing to teach to someone else, it makes you look at loads of different ways, which is great.
For sure. If someone wanted to, to learn how to paint or draw, and obviously, to sign up for a class, but how should they begin? Like what medium would you su- suggest for a beginner?
Well, I'm quite biased towards acrylics. I think they're brilliant because they're very forgiving. If you're using watercolor, for example, it can be quite fiddly, and if you do something that you're not happy with, then that's it really. You can't do a huge amount to salvage it. Whereas the acrylics are great. You can, like, I would always encourage people to build up their paintings in layers. And then, if you do something that you don't like, it's not a mistake. It's just an extra layer. You just paint over it. And they're a fun way to work. So they're a nice medium.
Nice. How how do you find the government backing and support for artists here in Ireland?
Well, I haven't got any of it.
It sucks, yeah.
So yeah, it's awful. No, no, I'm sure it's fine. I mean, I'm still emerging, so I wouldn't expect to be getting that yet anyway. But yeah, I mean, there's a sauna which is for, I'm not even sure how many artists are in it now, but I think if you're one of them, I'm sure it's great, but I think it is quite difficult maybe to break into that, a little bit closed or whatever. But I mean, the Arts Council would have quite a few supports with regards funding and bursaries or whatever. I'm lucky where I live. We have Wexford County Council have a really good arts department, and I've been lucky. I last year was the recipient of a bursary to go to the from Wexford County Council to go to the Tyrone Guthrie Centre in Monaghan. Um, so I actually just spent in May this year, I spent 2 weeks there, which was wonderful, just sort of having 2 weeks to just focus on nothing but making art. So that was really, really good. And actually the Living Arts Project was funded through the County Council as well. So yeah, I mean, I say I haven't got any of the government things, but I have been getting the County Council ones, so that's great.
How are the private galleries doing? Because in case anyone in the world doesn't know it, we had a bit of an economic downturn
Yeah, just
over the last,
slightly.
just a wee bit of belt tightening, but in general, is the visual art scene thriving? Are people making a living?
Um, well, I think certainly during the recession, it was tough. I mean, I don't think there was a huge amount going on in galleries, in a lot of galleries anyway. But I mean, it's like anything else. There are always, even throughout any recession, there are always people with money who will buy stuff, but it tends to be the higher end nearly. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think in the last year and a half, 2 years, things are definitely picking up, and there does appear to be more sales. So yeah, hopefully it's onwards and upwards.
Oh, good stuff. Good stuff. Now, you paint both portraits and landscapes. Any preference to one or the other, or to sound very pompous about it? Are there periods? Are you
Yeah,
going?
it just depends. I mean, I do have a huge fondness for painting portraits, and it's probably something that interests me. It probably is my first love, really. But I am very interested in painting these sort of street scenes and beach scenes. I tend to do a lot of as well. But like that, they're ones that would be influenced by the bokeh photography. So they would tend to be quite blurry. Or else I would do sort of semi-abstracted landscapes. I'd very rarely, in fact, never paint a landscape that's sort of maybe a traditional landscape because it just doesn't interest me really as such. I'm not sure why.
Oh, sure. Well, because it's been done and done and done and done and done. I'm originally from a city in Canada called Thunder Bay, Ontario, and there's this rock
Yeah,
formation in Lake Superior called the Sleeping Giant.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, and you walk into any gallery there, and there's like 15 different
Oh, it's done
reproductions
so
of the
much.
Sleeping
Yeah,
Giant. For
yeah.
God's
It's a
sakes,
bit.
turn around. There's got to be something else to paint.
Yeah, it's a bit like I'm originally from Dalkey in Dublin, and which is a beautiful spot. But there's an island just off the coast there called Dalkey Island, and it's like it must have been painted about 3 billion times more.
Stand here, paint that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it
I
is beautiful, but it would sort of stop me wanting to paint it, I guess, or trying to find maybe a different way of painting it. But I mean, that's near on impossible, I think, at this stage.
I really like some of the urban landscapes
Oh,
that,
thank
that
you.
that you've done. They are beautiful.
Yeah, it's a bit sort of ironic that I moved from Dublin to sort of a very rural place and then start painting sort of cityscapes. But
We're artists. We're never satisfied where we are. Yeah. Well, and also you refer to the relationship of painting and memory.
yeah,
Yeah. I just want to. Oh yes, right. Yeah, from the biography on your website, and I'll put the URL for it on this. She sees the visually distorted areas of resulting paintings as metaphors for inaccuracies in memories. Wonderful line.
bit of a mouthful.
It's not Sude's corner. No, no. I like that. Would you care to expand on the thought?
um, well, you're talking about sort of the inaccuracies in memory part, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I always just find it interesting how memory, like while we think it's sort of exactly as things were, it's actually a very inaccurate way of recording a situation. I mean, I always find it interesting that if you were to talk to maybe 3 people who were at the same event, or maybe 3 members of a family who were at the same family gathering, they'd probably all have completely different memories of the one thing. So it's sort of which one is accurate, or are any of them accurate. And I guess that interests me a little bit.
By all means. Now, you have how many children?
3.
Three. Are any of them going to follow in your work, or is it that so
I
this is
don't
what
think
mom
so.
does? I have to do. I'm going to be an accountant. you know?
Well, actually, that has sort of happened. I have 3, as I say, but they're all quite big. I mean, the eldest one is 23, so she's not a child anymore, and she studied law in Trinity and is now working for an internet cloud company and loves that. And then our son, he's 19, and he's just finished his first year in university doing arts, but not art. And the youngest one, still in school, but they they're all pretty good at art, but they haven't really got an interest in pursuing it as a career, and that's fine.
Okay, so they're still invited to Christmas dinner then.
Oh, most definitely, most definitely. No, it's fun. I mean, the older one would quite often, you'd find her sketching, and she's pretty good at art or whatever. And she'd do it as a hobby, but she wouldn't have an interest in working in that field. And then our son, he wouldn't really make as much art, but he's got a very good eye, and I would sort of sometimes, if I were working on a painting and I was trying to decide was it working, was it not. Sometimes he'll come in and he'll say, "Oh, I like that because," or "I don't like that because," and he always gets it exactly right. But like that, he doesn't really make a lot of art. The younger one hates it.
Fantastic. Now,
Yeah.
for tourists coming, to our lovely moss-covered island, and besides the National Portrait Gallery in Dublin, which is fantastic and is one of the first places I ever went to when I moved here. Are there any off the beaten track places that someone should go to get an appreciation of Irish art?
Yeah, well, not off the beaten track. The First National Gallery is always great, and Emma is brilliant for more contemporary stuff.
Yeah,
But if you're outside of Dublin as well, I mean, obviously I'm going to say come to Wexford, come visit my studio.
it's a
Or sorry, not
beautiful
come see
county.
my
Yeah,
studio. Oh, sorry, I have a bit of don't know what I'm talking about there. Come see my studio. But there's also, there's art centres around the country. Like I teach or I facilitate workshops in the Wexford Art Centre, and there's usually fantastic exhibitions in the centre. And then everywhere you go, there are these smaller places. Like there's a new place just opened up in Wexford called Art Panther at the moment. I have a piece in there, and it's sort of quite it's a very small little gallery, but quite an eclectic collection of works. So, just have a look around at the smaller places because they can be sometimes really interesting.
fantastic. Now, when we were doing a pre-conversation about this, I said that I'll try and ask reasonably intelligent questions, but I'm going to ask anyway. So, how do you
Yeah,
go
you
about
probably
cleaning
wouldn't get a reasonably intelligent answer there.
You're doing fine. How do you? Okay, so how do you properly clean a brush?
How do you clean a brush? Well, you were asking earlier if I was painting in oils or white or acrylics. If I were painting in oils, I would have to go and get white spirits or terps and blah blah blah. And I work in acrylics, so it's great. I just pop my brushes in water, give them a little bit of a rinse, and they're fine. At the end of the day, I could just clean them in a small bit of washing up liquid. That's it, done.
A- a- And actually, slightly more technical. Is there an appreciative difference between a horsehair brush and uh, I'll talk dumb now, and a plastic brush? You know?
It depends what you're using. I mean, there's the hog hair brushes. I know a lot of people like them with the oil or whatever. I personally like the synthetic brushes. Um, Even if I was using oils, I like the synthetic. But for acrylics, definitely like them. I mean, I just like they're quite soft and I just find they're nicer to use with. They're not as bristly or whatever. Um, so yeah, I would preference them.
Fantastic. Una Latchford, thank you ever so much
Thank
for
you,
putting
Hubert. It
up
was
with me.
lovely to speak to you.
My pleasure entirely. Have a beautiful day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. Bye.
Cheers. We'd like to thank once again Una Latchford for being our guest today on Thoughts, Comments, Opinions. That's our last show for this week. And when I started this, I really didn't think I was doing a daily show, but it's been great fun. Next week, we'll have on a whole series of other guests, more painters, more writers, more. Well, we want to know who you'd like to hear. They don't all have to be artists. I'm perfectly willing to sit down and talk with people about sports, about politics, about economics, but anything that you think is important. After all, it's your show. And if you'd like to sponsor our show, he says, segueing on in, do drop us a line. In the meanwhile, have a beautiful weekend or a beautiful week, depending when you're listening on this. And from all of us who work the late shift in Ireland, good night, everybody.